chucked me in the back of the van, took me to a military base, and interrogated me for about 4.5 hours. They pulled one of the big reasons we're in such a mental health crisis right now is a lot of the research I've done that I'll talk about shows unanimously. Back in 2017, I left alone from the UK to hitchhike to the other side of the world. Why did I do this? Partly I had nothing better to do, but also I had this real mistrust for what I was being told. I was being told, as we all are, that the world's a dangerous place. We look at the news and we see bad things happening. We're told that this country is bad, that place is dangerous, and don't go there, don't do this, don't do that. And I just thought it can't be true. So I thought I'd test it. And the idea was that if I could get to the other side of the world just by hitchhiking, just by relying on the kindness of other people, I'd prove to myself and other people that that narrative's wrong. Turns out I was right. There was never really anything that bad that happened to me that wasn't my own fault. Most of the bad stuff that happened to me was either wild animals, so I got kind of attacked by wolves one night, and I had to stand my ground so that they didn't rip me apart. Other nights involved all sorts of discomfort in the tent. I had one very wet night where it was basically like I was basically on a river. I wasn't on a river, but it was heavy downpour and it was coming into the tent and my sleeping bag got soaking wet, but that was my fault as well. The only time other people were really that hostile was mostly because I'd done something wrong or I'd misunderstood something. So I went through all sorts of different countries and cultures, as you can imagine, to get to the other side of the world. I started off in Europe, which wasn't that different from the UK. But then I got into Russia, which again wasn't that different. But then I went into Central Asia. I went into Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, countries I'd never heard of before embarking on this trip. And I won't share too many stories in this first episode. It's really just an overview, but there's some really, really interesting ones. After that, ended up having to go back on myself quite a bit, for reasons that will become clear later. There was basically a lot of trouble getting into China. But I got into China, all through China, Southeast Asia, to Singapore, and then managed to find a couple of people who could pay for a flight to Australia because they believed in the journey, what I'd been doing and everything. So 2 years, 3 years in Australia because I'd run out of money. I'd started building a life up in Australia. I had a girlfriend, had a flat, had a career, had a family out there. There was a couple of aunties and uncles that lived out there that I didn't know about before. It wasn't me having kids with someone because I had to leave after too long. So had a bit of a family out there. And then when I left, it meant that I had to uproot that life. It really meant that my life fell apart. So most of us have an established foundation of our life. We have, like I said, a family, a household of some sort, somewhere to live, somewhere to go and earn money, a routine, all these things. And these things are what keep us calm. They're routines. They keep the debt collectors away. They ensure that we have communication with people, social interaction, consistency, normality. It means we feel normal, we can feel embedded somewhere, and we can pursue goals to move forward. And having that ripped away meant that I wasn't relaxed anymore. I could never be relaxed. It took me about 2 years to feel relaxed again after coming home. So that was about as much of an adventure as actually hitchhiking. That difficulty, that determination I needed to get back to having a life established, and I do now, which is partly why I feel ready to start sharing content on YouTube. So it's taken about 8 years to get here from the very first day setting off, but over that time I've gained some very unique insights into a lot of the problems we have. So just so you know, I'm not some random person talking about problems and solutions. I've got a psychology master's degree, a counselling diploma. I'm the director of a CIC, which is basically a charity, just a slightly different one. And I've got a lot of experience working in mental health. And obviously I've done this big adventure. So really what I've done over that time is observed a lot of stuff, combined a lot of knowledge, reflected on myself, and come up with, like I said, just some insights really. So what I do nowadays is I take people outside, I show them the restorative power of nature, of the outdoors. And that's all from personal experience. So I used to have a big anxiety problem and managed to get through it. And the way I got through it was getting outside, being in nature, breathing clean air, or fresher air than is what we have indoors, and just being in green spaces and just being around what we evolved to be in as human beings. We've evolved to be in outdoor spaces, not indoor spaces. So this will be expanded on greatly in episodes to come, but one thing I've found that I'd like to share is we need to be outside at least 15 minutes a day. One of the big reasons we're in such a mental health crisis right now, and a physical health crisis, is because we're not going outside enough. We're just indoors all the time. And we might be socializing, we might be healthy, we might be, all these other boxes might be ticked, but if we're not outside, we're not giving our bodies what we need. And so a lot of the research I've done that I'll talk about shows unanimously that it's a basic human need. It's not just something to do as a hobby, being outside. So circling back to the CIC, this is what I do. I get people outside for free. I take them outside, and honestly, the amount of difference in people's moods before and after is significant. Personally, my mood, it always improves when I go on a walk. So that's just one thing I do today, is I get people outside. And it's really what the whole brand is going to be. If you haven't already stopped watching, if you decide to continue watching, it's going to be nature-based, psychology-based, and there's going to be all sorts of stories of resilience as well. So several stories I can pluck off the top of my head from this hitchhiking trip will be extremely useful to you as viewers. So probably the biggest story would be not being given a visa to China, and there was no way around it. There was no way. I was in Kazakhstan, I was just past Russia, and there was no way to get to the other side of the world without going through China. And they just wouldn't give me a visa. They had a very strange process, which was, it basically involved you have to go into an interview in your country of residence. And I couldn't do that without going home. And going home would mean failing the trip. I know it would have been in 2 parts, but I wanted it to be one continuous trip, one unbroken line. I didn't want to go home and stop all the growth I was doing and feel like I'd failed. So I decided I've got to make this work. And I remember thinking there's no way forward. I cannot see a way forward. And quite often in life today, I don't see a way forward. But if you decide you've got to do something, if you decide that's what you want to do, what I found was if you just keep at it, the information ahead of you changes. You see it differently after a while. And so what I found was, what it said was country of residence. You have to be in your country of residence to have an interview to get a visa. Before I'd realised what that really meant, I saw country of citizenship, basically where I live. Country of residence is different. You can gain residency in another country that you're not from. And that's exactly what I did. So that's why I went back on myself to Georgia to live there for 6 months, gain a visa to China successfully, and then carry on. So that's one thing I've really learned about resilience, is it really is about not giving up. It's about just carrying on, reassessing the information, gaining other opinions, and that kind of thing. So I've worked hard over the last, I suppose, 8 years, but particularly the last 2 years, to find new ways of explaining problems that I myself face and other people face that I know are quite common as well. one of the biggest ones is isolation. It all encapsulates into one general, I suppose you could say, hierarchy of needs. But if you don't satisfy certain needs, then you can't feel good about yourself. You can't feel happy. You can't feel connected or whatever. So there's some things that we miss in today's world that people aren't aware that they're actually missing. And I suppose that's really what I want to make people aware of. When I did get into China, it was not what I was expecting at all. It was Orwell's 1984. I know that idea is thrown around a lot today, but it really was. So it was, I walked onto the street, came down from the mountains from Tajikistan, walked out. There were bag scanners on every corner. There were armed police on every corner. There was a general feeling of always being watched, because I think I was. There were cameras everywhere, more than in the UK. Whenever I'd walk down the street to get out of the city, so there's one particular story which is quite amusing. I remember walking out of the city, the first city, and coming up to a police checkpoint, and they were just completely caught out. They were just back in their chairs, completely shocked. What are you doing here? What the hell is going on? They probably haven't seen a white person in months and months or years, maybe ever. I don't know. But they chucked me in the back of the van, took me to a military base, and interrogated me for about 4.5 hours. They pulled a English teacher out of bed in the middle of the night to come and talk to me, to come and interpret what I was saying. And they were just asking me questions like, what are you doing? Like, what happens if you get lost? Where's your map? Where's your tour guide? Where's your family? All these things. They just could not understand that hitchhiking was a thing, and I'd actually trying to explain that I'd come from the UK just by hitchhiking and walking was actually impossible, as much as I tried to do it. But they were also quite friendly. They gave me food. They gave me, one of the military people, they saw that I had loads of flags sewn on my bag, and they actually peeled one off their uniform and gave it to me to sew on, and I still have it now. It's actually, I don't know if you can see it up there. It's underneath the main flap. So that was cool. So anyway, I got let out, got sent back to the city in a car. They pulled a civilian over, said, take this man to this hotel so they can monitor my movements. They stopped at a traffic light. I rolled out and ran away, basically, and camped in the middle of the road in this big bush all around. I think it was in the blind spot of a load of cameras. So that was pretty cool. Next day I walked back out and thought, I've got to get to the outskirts of the city without being seen. So I went very carefully, got up very early. Anytime I saw a police car or any sort of police presence, I'd find somewhere to hide. And it took all day, but I managed to get to the outskirts, almost to the outskirts of the city. And then what I had then was blocks of buildings, like square blocks, pretty much perfect square blocks, a bus stop on every corner of the block. And what I ended up doing was going into the bus stop, where there were always loads of people, wearing sunglasses, so it was hard to tell that I was British, letting the regular patrols go round the blocks. As soon as they were out of my view, or I was out of their view, I'd sprint to the next bus stop. As soon as I got there, the next patrol car was just coming around the corner, and then it would start again. As soon as they just went around the final corner, I'd sprint to the next one. This happened about 6 times, and I'm not sure what the locals thought I was doing. Maybe they didn't notice. They were all on their phones, it was unusual back then to be on your phone all the time. Before I left to get to China, to get to the other side of the world in 2017, it wasn't really a thing, and it was a real big shock coming home to see that. But anyway, made it to the edge of made it to the very outskirt of the city, and then started walking out the bus stop, and I heard police sirens. So I ran as fast as I could to this it was like a big hedge on the other side of the road, and just ran all down this hedge, almost burrowed into a ditch, and just lay there like a dead body. Just praying they wouldn't find me, because I just didn't have the energy to do it all again. It was a lot. So I heard the sirens go up and down the street looking for me, people talking. No idea what they were actually saying, but it was something like, have you found him? That sort of thing. So, and then they gave up. So I camped right there in the ditch, got my sleeping bag out. I was very comfy, very cozy, made a cup of coffee to fall asleep to, because I drank that much coffee by that point. That's what I could do, and had a really good night. And the next day, made it out of that city and made it to the next city, which was much, much worse. But that'll be for another episode. So there's loads of stories to share, and they're all in my head, and there's so many of them I can't quite. There's too much to talk about, and I need to talk to you about them. I need to share them. I need to process them, because although I've learned a lot over the last few years, there's a lot of new information to extract from these stories, and I want to get at it, because it's something that no one else has done. I'm the only one who's done this trip, and I just need to reflect on it, find new knowledge from it. There's a book I'm writing about it. It's just all about the adventure, telling the story and stories of the whole thing. And it's just going to help writing that. So that's due out in 2027, June 2027, because that'll be 10 years from when I set off. So I just hope in the process I can help people, I can help you to get information that you wouldn't otherwise get, to hopefully help you get where you want to go. So that's it, really. If you're feeling stuck in any way, or you just need that boost, you need that bit of information, maybe that quote to get going, then this is the show for you. So do subscribe, follow, whatever people do these days. There's going to be, I'll just tell you a bit about the show that I'm envisioning now. So there's going to be guests, there's going to be people who have done things similar to me, there's going to be people who, I think the main theme of guest is going to be people who have come by knowledge that isn't common. So uncommon knowledge, new information that is very helpful. So that's the sort of person I'm going to try and source. And hopefully I'll learn loads from that as well as providing new information again to you. Other episodes are going to be about just telling more stories about the trip. So, and then extracting information and finding meaning from it and new information. But also there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. So one of the things is burnout. I've burned out several times before, and it's just not something we're that aware of, and it's in some ways it's actually encouraged in today's world, which is really quite disgusting. But talking about that, so there's going to be an episode on burnout, what it is, how to see it in yourself, how to see it in others, how to work through it, how to avoid it, all of that stuff. I also want to talk about failure, really, and my own experience with it. So instead of thinking failure is this thing that must be avoided, I really see it as something that is useful. So I'm a mountain leader as well, so I can take people up into the mountains and make sure the group's happy, learning, communicating everything, while paying attention to the weather, what it's doing, dangerous elements, all that sort of stuff. So it's probably the second hardest thing I've had to do apart from this trip. So apart from, obviously, master's degree, bachelor's, that was easy compared to the mountain leader qualification. That's not to put you off doing it at all. It's not difficult in the way that academic stuff's difficult. It's difficult in the way that it just requires a different mindset to what we're told in school. So in the assessment week, I went in on the first day, and the main guy running it said, although this is an assessment, we expect you to make multiple failures and to learn from them and to continue growing throughout the week. And I thought that's a really unique way of seeing an assessment course. An assessment course is normally you're in, you either know it or you don't, and then pass or fail. But this was different, and the whole week we were encouraged to push ourselves and grow and notice what we weren't doing so well and admit it and come forward about that. And so the Mountain Leader is really a unique assessment in that way, and I learned a hell of a lot from doing it. So there's a lot in that story about failure and growth that I'd like to share in another episode. So if you have any ideas of what you'd like to be covered in a show, or if you'd like to come on yourself, do please send me a message or write a comment in the comments section, because I'm always looking for ideas. And it's going to be really good to gauge what you as the audience want to know about, want to learn about and see and hear. So definitely communicate with me. I'll respond to everything, and it will be extremely helpful. So that's it. Thanks very much.